Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Have you ever felt like you were kind of laced into a life you didn't choose? Well, that is like the big question. The heart of this book we're diving into today, The Corset Girls Unlaced.
Mm.
It's historical fiction, by the way, and trust me, you'll want to hit that like and subscribe because we are going way beyond, your typical bodice ripper stuff. We're going to explore resilience and ambition and finding love in some of the most unexpected corners of Victorian London, no less.
Right.
Yeah, speaking of corners, this book is set in Whitechapel and Mayfair, two worlds that are like as different as a silk corset and a factory apron, right?
Totally.
You can grab a copy. The Amazon link is in the description. Our main characters, we've got Jillian Morehouse. She escapes, like a brutal past, to become a corseteer. And then there's Michael Kelly. He's our, tough guy, covered in tattoo, but a hidden heart, right?
Yeah.
And there's a connection to this brothel called the Flower Garden. I mean, already I am sensing like some juicy symbolism here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the contrast between Jillian's her super carefully planned plan for life that she has, and then the reality that she gets thrust into. It's super fascinating. And McEwen uses this to highlight the limitations that women had to deal with back then, in the Victorian era, even as they were trying to find more independence.
Right. She starts with these dreams of refinement. But after fleeing a dangerous situation with her friend Ada, she ends up crafting corsets,
Yeah.
which are like these powerful metaphors, right? For shaking not just bodies, but like destinies even.
Exactly. And that's where the setting becomes so important. Because you have Whitechapel, known for its poverty and all the crime, juxtaposed with the wealth and all the fashion of Mayfair, of course. And the corsets themselves become these markers of this, divide, luxurious for the wealthy, but just functional for those working in places like, the Flower Garden.
Oh, I love those details about the different materials and techniques, whalebone and silk, the agonizing tight lacing. It's not just fashion, it's like a whole social commentary, right?
Absolutely.
Speaking of commentary, let's talk about Kel. He's like intimidating at first, covered in tattoos, working at a brothel. But then you see how protective he is of Jillian and Ada. What did you make of that like contrast?
He's like a walking contradiction, which I think is what makes him so compelling. On the surface, he embodies all those anxieties of the era about working class men, their perceived violence, criminality. But McEwen peels back those layers to show, the vulnerabilities underneath.
Totally. Like that scene where Jillian witnesses a fight between Kel and this like rival gang, the Cortellis. It's clear his past haunts him, specifically his ties to the Jacks. But he's also clearly, like, trying to build a new life. Do you think he can escape his past?
That is the central question of his arc, isn't it? Yeah, McEwen doesn't give us any easy answers. And I think Kell's struggle represents a broader question, of the time. How much does our past actually determine our future?
Right. And amidst all of this, we have Jillian and Kel's relationship blossoming, I guess you could say. It's electric from their first encounter, which, let's be honest, it's pretty awkward. I mean, she faints at his feet.
She does.
But there's this undeniable pull between them.
Yeah, the key word there is pull, because it's not just, romantic attraction, it's a clash of our worlds. Jillian is drawn to Kell's strength in a way that really challenges her carefully constructed plan. And he, on the other hand, is both drawn to her and intimidated by her aspirations.
Right. And then that scene at the Flower Garden, where he protects her during an attack. Wow. Their connection, it deepens. But it's clear they have a long road ahead of them.
Exactly. You've got his past, her doubts about them being suitable. It's not your typical bodice ripper romance, McEwen makes us feel every bit of their struggle.
And then, just as they start to find their footing, boom, Jillian is abducted from the Duke of Fell's and St. Andrew's carriage. Talk about a twist. What did you think about that, like, sudden shift in the story?
It raises the stakes dramatically. Suddenly, the romance takes a back seat to survival, and the mystery deepens too. Who are these abductors, and why target Jillian?
Right. It's not just a personal conflict anymore. It's a glimpse into a, like, darker side of London. And it throws their already shaky relationship into even more turmoil, right?
Yeah. Welcome back. We left off with Lillian's which, really throws a wrench into everything. But before we dive into the mystery itself, there's a scene right after she's taken that I found incredibly revealing.
Oh, you mean when she's brought back to Kel's room in Whitechapel? Still in shock. That was heartbreaking.
Exactly. He could have just turned her away. easily. But he chooses to care for her, right?
Yeah.
He, like, bathes her wounds, watches over her. It's a side of him we haven't seen before.
It's like all his rough edges just soften. And for Jillian, it's got to be confusing. She's drawn to his, like, tenderness, but it also clashes with the, image she had of him.
Absolutely. It complicates her plan for life even further. She's starting to see Kel as more than just a tough guy from Whitechapel. And that scares her almost as much as the abduction itself.
And then there's the secret lurking. Kel's past with the Jacks. Oda knows, and she confronts him about it.
Yeah, that scene is so powerful. He's not just protecting Jillian, but she's challenging Kel too, to be honest with himself, to break free from all that secrecy. That has defined his life.
It's like she's saying you can't build a future on half-truths, especially in a situation as dangerous as this.
Precisely. And then we have Detective Inspector Exeter, who shows up to investigate the abduction, but his interest in Jillian becomes more than professional pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah, he totally has a thing for her, taking her to fancy restaurants, a variety show, like the world Jillian always dreamed of.
Right. And it creates this fascinating, like, triangle. You have Exeter, who represents, the refinement and the social standing that she craves. And then there's Kel, embodying the raw passion and the danger that she's also trying to escape.
She's torn between two different versions of herself, almost. The, like, carefully crafted lady, and the woman who's falling for a man. That society just deems unsuitable.
And Kel's watching this all unfold, too. Battling his own demons. He's jealous, insecure, convinced he's going to lose her to someone like Exeter.
Right, and there's that scene in Hyde Park where he sees them together. You can just feel his heart breaking. And it fuels his desire to prove himself, to show Jillian that he can be more than just a Whitechapel tough,
Which leads to his decision to take Jillian to the house, the one he's fixing up in Hackney. On the surface, it's romantic, but there's so much more going on.
Right, it's like he's trying to bridge that gap between their worlds. But it also kind of backfires spectacularly. I mean, Jillian, she's impressed by the house, yeah, but she's also put off by his, like, intense questioning about her past.
That scene is their first real fight. She feels so exposed, and she accuses him of trying to, like, elevate himself by associating with her. It's just raw, and it reveals their deepest insecurities.
And Kel, in a rare moment of vulnerability, opens up about his own past. He talks about losing his siblings, the hardships his family had to endure. It's like the first time he lets anyone see that pain.
Yeah, and that's what breaks down the walls between them. Jillian finally sees him not as this threat, but as a fellow survivor. It leads to that, like, incredibly passionate declaration of love from Kel, where he just acknowledges her strength, her resilience.
Oh, that scene was hot. He finally, give in to their desires. But even then, there's this sense of uncertainty hanging over them.
Because Kel is still holding back. He's afraid to commit, convinced he's not good enough for her. It's that classic romantic dilemma, wanting love but being terrified you'll just do it.
And just when you think, okay, maybe things will settle down, boom, another bombshell, right?
Yeah.
Jillian gets asked to make a delivery to Lady Rosalind Melton, the Duke's fiancée. Remember him? The whole carriage incident?
Oh, yeah. And Kel's instincts are screaming danger. He tries to warn Jillian, but she's so caught up in her own turmoil, she doesn't listen.
Which, of course, leads to the second abduction. But this time it's not just random. It's part of this bigger scheme involving this shadowy organization called the Church.
And that's where things get really interesting. We're not dealing with personal conflicts anymore, but with this sinister force operating beneath the surface of London society.
Talk about a cliffhanger. Welcome back to the show. Last time we left off, remember Jillian's second abduction. This church thing, it's not just about her anymore, is it?
No, not at all. What seemed like, a personal vendetta or whatever is actually something much darker. The church is preying on these young women, using their wealth and influence to, like, hide in plain sight.
It's scary how easily they just blend in. Makes you wonder who you can trust.
Right.
Speaking of trust, how about Kel's reaction? Frantic, but he also knows he can't do this alone.
Exactly.
He teams up with Detective Exeter and, surprisingly, Dag, that Frenchman from the flower garden.
Interesting character.
What a trio, right? Like Victorian London superheroes.
Yeah.
Kel's street smarts, Exeter's, authority, and Dag's, well, let's just say he has ways of getting information.
And he does.
Their search takes them deep, right? Underbelly of London. Corruption that goes way beyond just Jillian.
It reminds you that power can be used for good or for evil, and the people with the most to lose often have the least protection.
That scene where Kel confronts Wilkins, the guy who took Jillian, intense, Kel's rage, but also, like, desperation.
Yeah.
He's not just a tough guy anymore. He's fighting for the woman he loves.
That's a real turning point for him. Not self-preservation, not revenge. It's love that pushes him forward, and I think that's what makes him heroic.
And Jillian, meanwhile, trapped in the ruins of St. Decuman's Church,
Chilling setting.
but sacred now, symbol of, like, corruption.
Right. The church is desecrating not just the place, but the ideas of faith and compassion, too.
Makes you think how easily institutions can be twisted.
It does.
And Jillian, even in this, terrifying situation, shows incredible strength.
She does.
She refuses to be a victim.
She even comforts Sally, the other captive.
Yeah, it shows her resilience, but also her empathy.
Even when she's suffering, she helps others.
Powerful stuff. Okay, the climax. Kell, Exeter, and Dague. They storm St. Decuman's, confront the church, rescue Jillian.
It's a victory, but it comes at a cost.
Doesn't it always? Jillian's traumatized. Her memories are messed up.
And Kell, he blames himself.
Yeah, withdraws from her.
Thinks he's not worthy.
Heartbreaking. But that's where Ada comes in. Keeps Jillian to see her mother, Mom.
Ma'am is amazing. Such a strong character.
She's faced so much, but still believes in love.
Her advice, communicate, forgive, choose happiness.
Exactly what they needed. Jillian learns the truth about Kell and accepts him, flaws and all.
And Kell realizes running won't help.
You have to face his fears, fight for their love.
That final scene where they're building a life together, so hopeful.
They defied expectation, overcame so much.
Found happiness on their own terms.
The Corset Girls Unlaced. More than romance. It's about finding strengths in unexpected places, choosing your own destiny, no matter what.
What did you think? What resonated with you the most? Share your thoughts, your favorite moments, in the comments.
And don't forget, Amazon link and the description. Get your copy of the book. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. See you next time for another amazing story.